Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and restart. Welcome back to all of you guys. Welcome back. I'm going to teach you guys this topic of learning breathing mindfulness meditation so that you guys can now learn it in detail, because we've been doing it now 3 times together as a class. But now that you've had that experience, I'm going to go in and teach it to you so you can understand more and you can understand how it fits in to the overall practice that we were talking about with the Eightfold Path. Okay, so first, some basics about meditation is meditation is a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions where you're either eliminating unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivating wholesome qualities of the mind. And you're doing this in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. Okay, so it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. You're not just zoning out. You're not just looking at your thoughts. You're not observing thoughts. You're not bringing thoughts into your mind and kind of making friends with them. You're actually building certain qualities. It's kind of like taking your mind to the gym. If you go to the gym and you're actively exercising the muscle, then when your friend says, hey, can you help me move the couch or the sofa? Yeah, you can do that because you've got the muscles. So it's the same thing as that if you're exercising your mind properly through meditation in your day-to-day life, you can use your discipline and your control of the mind, and you can experience more and more peace in your day-to-day life. So you're building certain wholesome qualities and you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities. So this is what you're doing in meditation. This is a basic definition. Then it's important to understand what meditation isn't. Meditation isn't exercising or walking the dog, gardening, or driving. Sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to go for a drive and meditate, or I'm going to go for a jog and meditate, or I'm going to go out to the garden and meditate. These are activities that you might do, and you might thoroughly enjoy those, but it's important that you understand that they're not meditation. Because when I share with you to do meditation 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, if you went and did gardening for 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, you're not going to get to enlightenment through that. You need to learn the techniques that the Buddha taught in order to train your mind to develop those wholesome qualities and eliminate certain unwholesome qualities. So these things, while they may be very fun and very enjoyable, and you might do those things in your day-to-day life, be sure you don't see them as meditation, because you need to do that dedicated, active, purposeful training session. You're going to need a meditation teacher in order to get to enlightenment. As you guys heard yesterday, only a Buddha would be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. And you're going to need to have somebody to reach out to and get help from, because there's going to be certain times in your practice where certain things are occurring and you're going to need help, and you're going to need to ask somebody some questions and get guidance. So if you have a meditation teacher, this will be very helpful for you. If you would like to consider me your teacher, that's fine. You can do that. It's up to you. I don't need to hear from you every day, every week, every month, every year. Whenever you would like to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to do so, and I'm here to help you. There's been students over the years that I've come in contact with that didn't have a meditation teacher, and they ran into a lot of problems, and I was able to help them. I'll just share this one story with you so that you understand how important it is to have a meditation teacher. There was this one gentleman who was a doctor. He was a practicing physician, and he was reading books, watching YouTube videos, things like this, not realizing that he couldn't get to enlightenment by himself. And as he was practicing and trying to train his mind, he got to the point where he was having suicidal thoughts. He was sleeping for 23 hours a day. He was highly depressed. He couldn't function at his job anymore. He couldn't work for several years. His relationship with his fiancée was falling apart. He was just having a very hard time at it. So ultimately, he got in touch with me, and I was trying to help him through online, because he was in a different country for several months. But his case was so significant that I invited him to come to Thailand. I said, I need to help you here. He was having obsessive thoughts. Like sometimes he would ask me, like, what should I do during meditation? And I said, focus on the breath. He said, okay, thanks for sharing that with me. What should I do when I'm in meditation? What should I be doing? And I said, oh, you need to focus on the breath. And he's like, oh, okay, I understand. So what should I do during meditation? Like he would literally ask me the same question 6, 8, 10 times like this. He was having these obsessive thoughts, right? And this was all from trying to train his mind, not realizing that he was running into a brick wall, because you can't get to enlightenment without the help of a teacher or a guide. And for 2 years, he was going deeper and deeper and deeper into these problems, not realizing that he needed help. But somewhere along the lines, he found me and he reached out and he got help. Now he's back to work. He's not sleeping 23 hours a day. He doesn't have those obsessive thoughts. He did lose his relationship with his fiancée, but he's completely fine with that. But nonetheless, he eventually got the help he needed. But for about 4 to 6 years, his life was very miserable. I don't think you'll ever run into any of those kinds of issues because you have a teacher, you have somebody to help you. You're learning the proper way to meditate. But what he was doing was he was trying to piece together a whole bunch of YouTube videos and books and different things like this. And different people, they're not teaching the original teachings of the Buddha necessarily. Even you go to a temple, even you read a book that's written by a monk or somebody else, because of impermanence has affected the teachings of the Buddha too. So not every teacher teaches the same way, and not every temple teaches the same way. So it's important that whatever you're studying, that you base your practice on the original teachings of the Buddha. When you study his original teachings, you can learn, reflect, and practice and see the results for yourself. Whereas if you're out there dabbling in all these different things, it can really get you into some pretty challenging times. So you're going to need a teacher, and you can reach out at any time. I don't need to hear from you ever. You could contact me 10 years after this class. I've never heard from you for the next 10 years. You can say, hey, David, this is Gary. I was in your class back in September of 2024. You don't even have to say that, but you just say, hey, I'm Gary. I was in your class. Can you help me? Sure. I'll help you, right? So I don't have any expectation of you. I don't want anything from you. So anytime you would like to get help, just come get help, and I'm here to help you. There's 4 positions to meditate in: seated, lying, standing, and walking. I'm going to explain these 4 positions to you and how I use them. But then remember, you're not here to believe anything. I'm just going to share information with you of how I use them. And then you're going to need to decide in what situations you're going to use them and see what works best for you. So there's these 4 positions for a reason, because can you meditate in exactly the same position every single time? No? What's that? Yeah, you would struggle, right? Why can't you meditate in exactly the same position every time? What did the Buddha teach you? Something that the Buddha taught. Impermanence, right? Your body can't permanently be in the same position, right? There were times when I got into a motorbike accident and I couldn't sit on the floor. I could only lie, right? So there's these 4 positions for a reason, because your body can't permanently be in the same position because of impermanence. So the seated position is kind of like the primary position that most people learn in. That's kind of like your go-to position for a lot of people. And for me, that's the primary position that I meditate in, where I'm sitting on the floor or in a chair with my legs lightly crossed. But you can sit in a chair, you can sit on a sofa, in a wheelchair, you can sit any particular way that you like. Typically, your lower legs and your hands and arms are just resting comfortably. I give you guidance on these things as I help you to learn, but really you can sit however you like. And this is like a primary position to meditate in, and a lot of people learn in this position. But when you're in the seated position, you might be falling asleep or dozing off, or you might notice that there's aches and pains in the body at different times. So if you're noticing aches and pains in the body, that's where the lying position comes in. You can lie on the floor, face up, and this will relax all the muscles in the body. And if you'd like to do this, you can switch. If you're in a seated position, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes in, you're noticing some pain, switch to a lying position. There's nobody who gives out certificates for pain. If you're trying to train your mind and all your mind is experiencing is pain, 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 you're not going to be able to train your mind. So there's no rewards and there's no certificates to just breathe through the pain. The Buddha taught us through his life story that causing pain to the physical body doesn't produce enlightenment. So if you're ever in a situation where someone's teaching you to just breathe through the pain and the pain is going to help you to get to enlightenment, you can already know that that's not true, because the Buddha didn't do that. The Buddha realized that doesn't lead to enlightenment. So you can switch to a lying position. But in the seated and lying position, sometimes you might notice that you're dozing off and falling asleep, and that's where the standing position comes in. That you could just stand up with your hands either clasped in front of you or to the sides or behind you. And now you could just stand there with your eyes closed. You do the same exact thing with your mind, but it's just a different position. I've used this when I was falling asleep at different times. I've used it like at a bus stop. If I knew I wasn't going to be getting this bus for like 15, 20 minutes and there's nowhere to sit down, might as well get a little bit of meditation in, right? It wasn't considered one of my 2 or 3 for 30 minutes, but it was like a little touch-up. Little 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there. I've even been waiting in line before where this line only moves like every 15 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on what I was doing. And I would just stand there in line and meditate. So you can do those kinds of things if you like. So you can use standing position for that. And walking position is also good if you're noticing you're falling asleep. It's also good if you have an overactive mind, if you have a lot of energy in your mind, and the last thing you're thinking about is just sitting down and being still somewhere. Walking position is really helpful for you. So I'm going to teach this tomorrow afternoon, where we'll do walking meditation here, and you'll get a chance to practice it. And if you're not going to be here, it's recorded and it's online. You can learn it online. Okay, so this is good for if you're falling asleep or if you have an overactive mind. And you can interchange these at different times and use them at different times. And again, you're not believing me about what I just shared with you. You can practice these and see for yourself what works best. Okay, so these are some of the basics of meditation. Now, here's some things about starting and conducting your meditation practice. The first thing to understand is that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. What I mean by that is anything that's going on in the body, it's coming from the mind. So you need to go through the body in order to get to the mind. Even though the mind is the boss and the body is the employee, you got to go through the employee in order to get to the boss. So if the employee is in pain, it's not going to take you to go see the boss so you can train the mind. But also if the body is luxurious, then it's not going to take you to go see the boss either. So you'd like to be in the middle where the body is comfortable. So be sure that you get into a position that's comfortable. And if at any time it's not comfortable, just adjust your position or change your position to another position. The Buddha talks about setting up mindfulness in front of you. When you read his instructions and his guidance about meditating, he will typically say to set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. And what he's talking about is bringing awareness to the mind, that you don't just plop down into meditation and start meditating. And that's why I taught you chanting yesterday, that's what I used in order to build awareness of the mind before you ease into the meditation. So if you're going to do chanting, great, you could use that. But if you're not going to use it, it's okay too. You can still get to enlightenment. That's the only one thing that I teach that's not required in order to get to enlightenment, but it helped me. So that's why I teach it to you. But you could set up mindfulness without chanting. You could just kind of go to the bathroom, empty out the organs. You've already taken off your shoes. Maybe you do a little bit of stretching. You just kind of bring some general awareness to the mind. And now you can ease into meditation nicely. So you're going to need to do something to set up mindfulness in front of you. In terms of time, frequency, and schedule, is it possible to meditate at exactly the same time every day? No. Why? Impermanence, right? If you set a schedule for yourself to meditate at 8 a.m. every day, you're not going to be able to do that. It's not possible. Something's going to happen. I've been in meditation before. 3 to 5 minutes in, my son walks in the room. He says, "Dad, I need you to take me to school." I was like, "Oh yeah, really? I thought your mom was going to take you today." He was like, "Yeah, me too. She's already gone. She's left." I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'll take you to school." Right? So if you're attached to meditation and you're craving to meditate at exactly the same time every day, you're going to be angry in that situation or frustrated. But instead, if you're not attached, you can just let go, just move on, go take him to school and come back and meditate later. Right? So you're not going to be able to meditate at exactly the same time. But the Buddha meditated 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. Right? So if you kind of have these anchor points for yourself that you're going to meditate in the morning, you're going to meditate in the evening, and then somewhere in the middle of the day, if you can get a meditation in, great. And you'd like to build up to about 30 minutes of meditation. And that takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that, because you're going to need to clear some things out of your practice or out of your day-to-day life so that you can develop your meditation practice. Meditation is kind of like taking a shower and brushing our teeth when we were a child. Our parents were right there telling us to do it constantly. But by the age of about 12 or 13, we started liking that taste in our mouth where we had that fresh taste from the toothpaste, and we kind of liked feeling fresh, and we just started doing it ourselves because we saw the benefits of it. So you need to do enough meditation that you see the benefits of it, and then you can't even imagine going a day without meditating, that you'll have more and more of a tendency to choose to meditate because you see the benefits of it. So if you have a certain amount of time that you're looking for, you're building up to about 30 minutes. And the way that you do this is you're not interested in setting an alarm. If you set an alarm, you're going to be deep in meditation thinking, is it time yet? 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 You're going to be craving. Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit, and then it's like, man, if I didn't set the alarm, I could have got so much more benefit. So if you don't set the alarm, you're going to get more benefit. But in some cases, you're going to need to set the alarm, right? Because if you're on your way to work and you only have 20 minutes, or otherwise you're going to be late, go ahead and set the alarm. But in situations where you don't need an alarm, like on the weekends or in the evenings, it's best to not use an alarm and just meditate for as long as you need and then come out of your meditation. The way you know that you've been meditating for 30 minutes or more is you check the time before you start meditating. Maybe it's 9 a.m. And now when you're done meditating, you look at the time again. Oh, 9:15. Okay, well, I need to expand this a little bit more. So that's all you need to do is just check in about once a week, check in on your time. Are you going to So there's people that say that you should meditate at exactly the same time every day, like 3:30 a.m. Okay, there's nothing special going on at 3:30 a.m. in the morning that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse than any other time of day. So keep in mind that what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a practice back to as close as what the Buddha did as possible, because that's what's going to produce enlightenment. And if you remember, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha didn't have a watch. He didn't have a timepiece. So if somebody tells you that you have to meditate at exactly 3:30 in the morning every day, and that's the only way you're going to get to enlightenment, you know it's not true, because the Buddha couldn't have done that during his life and he still got to enlightenment. So this is where people sometimes introduce things into the mix that are just really not true. And you can independently verify these things for yourself and see the truth. Because if you know impermanence, there's no way to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day. It's just not possible. The Buddha didn't do it, so why would you? You don't need to do that. But if you have these anchor points, you'll be able to meditate and build up your practice. Now, if you typically go to sleep at 10 p.m., for example, you'd probably like to be meditating around 9:15, something like this. But that doesn't mean you can't meditate at 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. as well. It's just that you're not interested in waiting until you get tired or sleepy before you start meditating. You like your mind to be attentive and alert and active while you're meditating. It's not a time to zone out. It's a time to actively train the mind. Okay, so this is like your time, frequency, and schedule. If you notice sleepiness during your meditation, you have one of two options that you could take. The first one is you could change positions. Change to a standing or a walking, and that'll help you to extend your meditation practice. Or you could just get some sleep. Take a nap. Right? When you first start meditating, your mind's going to be pretty tired because it hasn't really been doing this type of exercise. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, the first week or two, you're going to be quite tired. Your mind's going to be the same way. And you might even notice this for longer than a couple of weeks. You might notice it for 3 or 6 months because you're trying to get over the hump where your mind can start coming into its own and start realizing more and more the benefits of meditation. So if you notice sleepiness, it's normal during the first part of your practice, because not only is your mind working really hard, but it's kind of like a dry sponge. Your mind's finally getting what it needs, and now it's going to start performing more optimally. And you might notice that you start having a tendency to fall asleep more and more. And you'll notice that you'll fall asleep easier when it's time to actually sleep, and you'll have a better quality sleep, right? So you'll notice that the mind will become sleepy as you're starting to meditate more and more, but then you'll eventually get over the hump, and you're going to see this energy coming into the mind where you have this sustainable energy all day long, where you won't drop off with your energy. You might notice physical sensations during your meditation. This is like the body itches and stuff like this. You might notice these little physical sensations. So if you're in meditation and you have this itch on your leg and you're having this urge to scratch it, I would suggest that you don't scratch it, that you watch it, that it arises, it changes, and it fades away. You're going to notice that it's impermanent. It's going to go away. But if you're like 5 seconds into that and you just have to itch it, like, okay, go ahead and itch it. But now try to elongate that. The next one, try to go 8, 10, 12 seconds before you have to scratch it. And eventually you'll be able to go the entire time of that scratch or that itch, and you won't have to scratch it because you have discipline of your mind. You're not trying to be affected by this impermanence in the world around you. Just stay focused on the breath. And when that itch comes up, just train your mind that it's impermanent and you know it's going to go away. It's only a matter of time. And just stay focused on the breath and don't allow your mind to be affected by this impermanent situation. Same thing with like sounds and things like this. If you notice certain sounds, if you hear a baby crying next door, it's okay. It's impermanent, right? Are you ever going to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet? Gary, are you ever going to be in an environment? No, you're never going to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet because of impermanence. So these sounds and different things like that, these are all impermanent, okay? You might notice that you have visual stimulation during your meditation. What I mean by this is while you're meditating, you might see certain colors or certain images because sight is happening inside the brain. The eyeball itself is just pulling in light, but sight is actually occurring inside the brain. So when you close the eyes, you might actually see things like colors of white or yellow or green or purple. Or you might have vivid imagery that's coming into the mind. This is all normal. There's nothing that you really need to do because it's just completely normal. What's actually occurring is that the physical structures of your brain are changing. Sometimes people contact me. They're like, I saw the color purple. Does that mean my boyfriend's going to come back to me? Or I saw the color green. Does that mean I'm going to get rich? No, that's not what it means at all. There's none of that, right? This is just the mind's creativity, thinking all these things and kind of conceit working into the mind. Instead, as you're training the mind, there's physical structures of the brain are changing because the brain and the mind are two different things, but they're actually connected to each other. There's like interconnectivity. So when you're cleaning up your mind, the physical structures of the brain are changing and sight is happening inside the brain. So that's why you're seeing that different colors and stuff like that. You might even actually hear the brain physically changing. I could hear it at different times. It's like... You could actually hear it physically changing. There's scientists and doctors and researchers that are studying this. They're taking long-term meditators. They're putting them in MRIs and CAT scans and other devices, and they can see the physical structures of the brain are changing. So scientists are actually proving what the Buddha taught, because the Buddha taught that when you get to a certain level of your training, that your mind won't regress backwards. And the scientists are showing the same thing, that once you get to a certain point of your training and the brain has changed to a certain degree, that it never goes back to the way it was before. And these changes are positive changes. I used to walk around with a lot of pressure in my skull. I used to have a lot of headaches and migraine headaches and stuff like this. But when I started training the mind, all that stuff went away. I don't get migraine headaches. I don't have pressure in the skull anymore. All that stuff's been cleaned up. So you might notice these kind of visual stimulation as you're training your mind, that your brain is physically changing, and it's all positive. It's all beneficial. Some people have been taught to meditate with external stimulus like beads or music or candles or incense or certain scents in the room or things like this. You don't actually need any of this stuff to meditate. There's only 3 things that you need to meditate: the body, the mind, and the breath. And you'll have these 3 things with you all the time: the body, the mind, and the breath. You would like to develop a meditation practice where it's not dependent on that phone app or that candle or that incense, because these things are all impermanent. And if you can only meditate when you have that phone app with you, or you can only meditate when you have that special candle, you're not going to be able to meditate anywhere, anytime. So you'd like to meditate with the body, the mind, and the breath. Those are the only 3 things you need. And you're going to have them with you into the end of this life. So if there's certain things that you're meditating with now, like music and other things like this, you can slowly move your mind away from those things. And the way that I suggest you do it is gradually, because then your mind will be more comfortable with that. Whereas if you go cold turkey and have this big abrupt change in your life, your mind typically doesn't like it. So let's just say you're meditating with music now, and it's like every session you're meditating with music. What I would suggest you do is do 1 session with it and 1 session without. 1 session with it, 1 session without. 1 session with it, 1 session without. And then get to 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without. 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without. And then I'll gradually expand that. 1 session with it, 5 or 6 without. 1 session with it, 5 or 6 without. Eventually, you're not going to need that music anymore. And you gradually, incrementally move the mind away from it like this, so that the mind doesn't even realize the impermanence, that it doesn't even realize what you're doing, because you're taking these small little incremental steps. And you can do this not only with something like music, but even like if you were addicted to cigarettes or coffee or caffeine or something like this that you're trying to get rid of, you can take small little incremental steps like this and kind of gradually move away from a certain thing like that. Okay, so you would like to get rid of all those external stimulus, because when you're in the mountains of Chiang Mai on a 3-day hiking tour in the jungle, you would like to be able to meditate anywhere, anytime, body, mind, and breath. Okay, so any questions on any of this stuff? Yes, sir. Yeah, if you could get a mic, there's folks online joining us.
The question I have is, meditating with your eyes open, is that a...
Is that helpful or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some meditations that we do with our eyes open. Like there's a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings that we do with our eyes open, or like walking meditation that we do tomorrow. You do that with your eyes open. But what you'll find is with all these other meditations is having your eyes closed, the mind has a tendency to go inward more, and you'll have more development of the mind that way because you're shutting down one of your senses and you're not taking in information. So that way you can go internal and really train the mind better this way. But there are those two that we do with the eyes open. Mm-hmm.
And one more question. You said meditating with physical sensations. So if you've got an itch or something, you just kind of
ignore it,
and it'll sort of pass.
It'll pass because it's.
But then there's
impermanent.
other types of sensations that are more closer, let's say, related to pain. Those things you don't ignore.
Those things you'd like to pay attention to because that's the body's way of telling the mind, hey, something's wrong here. Your knee is hurting.
Okay.
You need to take action to fix this. So yeah, with those, that's where you would like to change your body position. But if you have just an itch, you can just ignore it and stay focused on the breath. But you might get to that point where you just got to itch it. So just go ahead and itch it, but now try to make it longer and longer.
And then
and
just
longer.
continue on. Yeah.
And just continue. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Okay. As you said, the colors don't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
No, I had Reiki many years ago. I went to a Reiki session, and the guy was saying, you must breathe in and you must imagine it's blue. But you're breathing in blue because blue is more calming. So there's no meanings to the colors as far as Buddhism is concerned.
Yeah, you could have any number of different colors or images, things like this that can come into the mind. Because in breathing mindfulness meditation, what you're doing is you're training your mind to let go. You're going to hear in a moment from the Buddha, and you're going to see how I teach it, is that because the number one problem that you learn in the Four Noble Truths is how the mind's holding on. That craving, desire, attachment, it doesn't want to let go. It's craving permanence. So that's why you're training your mind to let go. Let go, let go. So when you see those colors, just let go and come back to the breath. Maybe you start thinking about something from your childhood, let go, bring it back to the breath. Maybe you're thinking about something in the future that comes into your mind, let it go, come back to the breath. So you're never going to eliminate your thoughts. As long as you're alive, you'll have thoughts. Even when you're enlightened, in your meditation, you're going to still have thoughts. But the difference is in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. It'll be like thought, 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 thought. Or you'll have a thought, you'll indulge in it for a period of time, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, you'll realize like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm meditating. You'll bring your mind back. So in the unenlightened state, you have a lack of discipline of the mind. So you'll have rapid thoughts or you'll indulge in a thought. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll still have thoughts, but they'll be very few and far between. And as soon as you have a thought, you'll notice it and you'll cut it off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. And then you'll have this long period of time where the mind is quieted and stilled. And that's what you would like to be able to ultimately get to, is that you have this quietness and stillness in the mind, not just during meditation, but outside of meditation too. You'll notice this quietness and stillness in the mind. Okay. All right. So continuing further, I have here the words of the Buddha, where he's talking about the 4 types of meditation that he taught. And I'm going to share this with you so you can gain this confidence to see that the Buddha taught you the same thing that I'm teaching you. Here, before he was talking about these meditations, he was talking about something else. And he was explaining to his students like, hey, you need to develop these 5 things. And he was explaining these 5 things to develop in order to get to enlightenment. And then he says, having based himself on these 5 things, the monk should develop further another 4 things. And these are the 4 meditations that he taught. The perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is for someone who's trying to reduce or eliminate their sexual cravings. There's a meditation to be able to do that. Then loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. So there's a fetter or pollution of mind called ill will. And there's a loving kindness meditation that can train your mind to eliminate all your anger from your mind. Mindfulness of breathing or breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts. Right? So this is helping your mind to learn how to cut off and let go, so that in daily life, when you're out there and you notice the anger arising and you notice that bodily sensation, you can cut it off and let it go. This is why you're not interested in labeling. This is why you're not interested in observing your thoughts or welcoming your thoughts in, making friends with your feelings and all these other kind of things, because the mind's still holding on. You would like to train your mind to let go so that in daily life you can let go and you can eliminate your craving and clinging. Then there's a meditation here to realize non-self. He says, the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana or enlightenment in this very life. So there's a meditation to help you realize non-self. That's something you're going to learn later. Right now we're focused on the foundational teachings. So I'm just showing you all of these so you can see that the Buddha did indeed teach only 4 meditations. You'll see thousands of them that are out there. But if you were to try to do all those things, sometimes those things are actually just the opposite of what the Buddha taught. And it's actually taking your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. So if you're being taught to look at your thoughts, observe your thoughts, make friends with your thoughts, label your thoughts, this is actually taking you in the opposite direction of enlightenment because you haven't trained your mind to let go and let go and let go. So the goal of these 4 meditations, there's specific things that you're eliminating and certain things that you're cultivating. These are the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating, and this is the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. So in breathing mindfulness meditation, you're cultivating you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment. That's what you're working to eliminate and bring that pollution down and ultimately eliminate it. You're training your mind to let go. And then you're cultivating the wholesome quality of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. Because when you're focused on the breath, you're developing more and more concentration. And when the mind goes off the breath and you notice it, that's your mindfulness that noticed that. So in 30 minutes, 3 times a day, 2 or 3 times a day, you're cultivating the mindfulness and concentration so that now in day-to-day life, when you're out there and you notice the frustration coming, when you notice the guilt coming, you can cut it off and let it go. So if you're training in meditation to cut it off and let it go, then in daily life, you'll be able to do the same thing. But if you're not training that way in meditation, you wouldn't be able to do it in day-to-day life. So it's like exercising your mind in the gym. What you do in meditation is different than what you do in day-to-day life. So if I was a professional pole vaulter, I might go in the gym and do weight training, agility training, some cardiovascular training. And then what I do in my sport of pole vaulting looks completely different, right? So this is the same thing. When you're in meditation, you're cutting off anything and anything that comes up, wholesome thought or unwholesome thought. You're just cutting it off and letting it go because you're training your mind in meditation to be able to let go, and develop mindfulness and concentration. But then in day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome things that come into your mind. So if you have the wholesome thought of taking your friends out to lunch and you'd like to practice some generosity, no need to cut that off. Practice that wholesome quality of generosity and take your friends to lunch or take your mom to lunch or your dad to dinner or something like that. But if the thought of punching your boss in the face comes up, you should cut that off. That's going to produce unwholesome qualities or the unwholesome results, right? So you got to cut that thought off. So anything in your meditation that's coming up, anything and everything, you cut it off and let it go because you're exercising your mind to let go. But in day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome qualities that are coming up. And you'll know more and more when those unwholesome things are coming up, what to cut off and let go of. And that's the right effort, that you're cutting off and letting go, abandoning those unwholesome qualities, and you're cultivating the wholesome qualities. So it looks like, Gary, you have a question.
So you use that expression, cutting off
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But can you expand on, like, in a granular way, like what that actually means?
Yeah, so internally, when you're looking at the breath and you're focused on the breath, anytime the mind moves off the breath for any reason, it's because there was a thought or something that came into the mind.
Or a discomfort.
Yeah, there's something thought that came into the mind, even if it's discomfort, right?
Yeah.
There's some thought that came into the mind, and you notice that. When you notice that, that's your mindfulness. And now what you would like to do is internally let that go. and bring the mind back to the breath. The breath is like the post or the pillar. And now this post and pillar, it's like you got these 6 animals that are tied to this post and pillar, and they're pulling and pulling and pulling. They've got this rope around their neck, and they keep pulling and pulling and pulling. And every time they get pulled, every time they pull, they get yanked back to this post. They get yanked back to this post. They get yanked back to this post. The breath is the post and the pillar. Eventually, if these 6 animals are tied to this post and pillar and they keep pulling, eventually they're going to learn. They can't go anywhere. They're just going to sit down by that post and pillar and they're going to be calm. It's the same thing with your mind. It's going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. And if you keep yanking it back and yanking it back and yanking it back, over time, consistent training, your mind's going to realize every time I pull, he keeps yanking me back. I'm not going to pull anymore. And the mind will eliminate its craving, desire, attachment. And that's how you do it. So there's the mind, and then there's the body, and then there's the combination of the mind and the body is the person. The person is training the mind. And whenever the mind is pulling, the person says, no, get over here. Get back to this breath. Get back to this breath. That's the post and pillar that you're yanking it back to. And now you get more and more discipline and more control over the mind. Rather than allow the mind to run around and frolic in the forest, you're disciplining it and you're controlling it so that now in day-to-day life, you can control the mind. Because when your mind's angry and sad and frustrated, you can't control it in that situation. So that's what you're building up more and more.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'll explain these other ones to you when you guys take other classes and other courses and retreats. We're going to be focusing on this meditation in this course. Which is the breathing mindfulness meditation, because this is what you need as a foundation. Normally, you build this up for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then once you do, you move into the loving kindness meditation. That's the next one that you need. Okay? So here's some more words from the Buddha about meditation. I saw this great teaching from the Buddha where he says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent, right? So your meditation practice is the stand. If you haven't really been meditating much, you've kind of got like a dowel rod there and your pot is like, just unbalanced on top of there. It's really easy to tip over your mind because you don't have a real stable stand. But the more you meditate, you create this more and more stable stand. And now it's harder and harder to tip over your mind, right? So that's what he's describing here. Here's a teaching from him where he's talking about what meditation leads to and the importance of it. He says, monks, there is one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So what he's saying is this breathing mindfulness meditation, there's one goal for this meditation, and it's to get to enlightenment, is to get to the peace and to the joy. He's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment. It's kind of like this. It's like your car. It leads to one thing, which is transportation. Right? This car, it leads to one thing. It leads to transportation. But of course, you need more in your life than just transportation. You need food and clothing and shelter and medical care and all these other things. So that's what he's saying. He's saying this meditation, a breathing mindfulness meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment, to the peace and to the joy of the enlightened mind. That's what this meditation leads to. So if you're interested in getting to that enlightened mental state, you're going to need meditation, but it's not the only thing. You couldn't meditate your way to enlightenment. One of the things that people have as a misunderstanding is they think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. So sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on meditation. You can sometimes go away to a retreat where they're meditating 8, 10, 12 hours a day because there's a lot of emphasis on meditation. Well, yeah, you need to meditate, but you need a sustainable long-term meditation practice where you can integrate it into your life. And over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, can you sustain a meditation practice for this longevity? Because it's wonderful to go away to a retreat and maybe meditate for 5 days or 10 days. But if that's all you're doing and you haven't built a sustainable practice, then you're not actually going to ever see enlightenment. So you need to meditate in order to get to enlightenment, but you need a whole lot of other things too. You need a sustainable long-term practice. So that's why the Buddha meditated 3 times a day, right? It's morning, midday, and evening. So if you build up to about 30 minutes per session consistently over the next several years, that's what's going to actually produce enlightenment. So if you did 2 meditations a day for a month, that'd basically be 60 meditations a month. Well, if you miss a few, because you will, if you miss a few and you're meditating maybe 52, 54 times a month, you're going to get to enlightenment potentially in this life, right? So your enlightenment isn't going to be determined if you never miss meditation from this point forward. That's not what's going to determine your enlightenment, because you're going to miss meditation because of impermanence. What's going to determine your enlightenment is now that you've missed meditation, what are you going to do next? Is it going to be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year that you don't meditate? Or now that you missed it, it's like, oh man, I missed meditation this morning. I better get back on this, right? I'm going to meditate now, or I'm going to meditate this afternoon or this evening, right? So consistently over the next 3, 5, 10 years, can you be consistently meditating? That's what's going to determine if you get to enlightenment or not. Here's some things to remind you about meditation. What you're doing with breathing mindfulness meditation is you're focusing on the breath. And the sound of the breath or the sensation of air. That's the post. That's the pillar, right? So you like to focus the mind on that post or pillar, the sound of the air coming in or the sensation of air coming over the skin. As thoughts arise, cut them off and let them go. Bring the mind back to the breath. The goal is not to eliminate your thoughts, but to train the mind to easily let them go. As I mentioned, even when you're enlightened, you're going to have occasional thoughts in meditation. It's completely normal. As long as you're alive, you're going to have thoughts. If somebody ever comes out of meditation and they're like, wow, I meditated the whole time and I didn't even have a thought. Well, having the thought of I didn't have a thought is a thought, right? If you're in meditation like, wow, I don't have any thoughts at all. Well, that's a thought. You had thoughts in meditation. You're just tricking yourself thinking you didn't have any thoughts, but you actually had thoughts, right? Because you wouldn't be able to come out of meditation and say, I didn't have any thoughts. Well, how did you know you didn't have any thoughts? Because you had a thought. Because you thought, I don't have any thoughts. You guys understand, right? So you can't get to the point where you never have any thoughts. It's just not possible. You can quiet the mind. You can still the mind, where you can go elongated periods where the mind is still and quieted, but you're still going to have occasional thoughts. But you're looking to notice them sooner and sooner and let them go easier and easier. That's what you would like to do. Okay? So there's this words from the Buddha where he says, meditate, monks. Do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. So what he's saying here is, when you're angry and you're sad and you're feeling guilty and shameful, you're going to regret having not meditated, right? So this is the only thing you're ever going to get from the Buddha, where he's kind of like, okay, go meditate. He's going to he's kind of encouraging you. This is one of the few times you'll see him say something like this, where he's like, meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. So essentially what I would say is never give up. Because if you give up on your meditation practice, you're basically relegating yourself to being angry and sad and frustrated the rest of your life. Because this is the exit door. If you would like to exit out of all these discontent feelings, this is the door. This is the way to exit, right? But if you close that door and you go sit down in the waiting room, you're just going to sit there and be angry and frustrated the rest of your life. You need to sling open that door and walk right through it and keep on meditating. So don't ever give up, okay? So any questions on meditation? No questions? Let me see if we have anything online. You guys online, you're welcome to ask questions as well. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So at this point, what I'd like to do is invite you guys to do some meditation, because each afternoon we usually do meditation together. So if you guys would like to meditate, we'll do the same thing where we ease into meditation with some chanting. Then I'll give you some guidance. Then we'll have that period of time where it'll just be quiet and we're meditating, and then we'll come out with the chanting as well.
Just one question regarding the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, specified way you should breathe deeply? How to regulate your breath?
Yeah, so the Buddha teaches that if you breathe short, know that you breathe short. If you breathe long, know that you breathe long. What he's basically saying is focus the mind on the breath. So the length of your breath is going to be different from person to person based on the capacity of our lungs, but you would like to develop a nice pace to your breath. So what I'll do is I'll use this microphone and I'll put it up to my nose so you can hear me breathing, so you can see kind of like the pace of the breath. This is kind of like the pace, because if your breath is really fast and rapid and your mind is fixated to that, your mind's going to be fast and rapid. But if you can slow down the breath and your mind's fixated to that, then it'll slow down your mind, because you're interested in slowing the mind down. Oftentimes in Western culture, we think doing things fast or quick is beneficial, but it's actually not, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You would like to slow down, make very conscious, very intentional decisions, and then you can bring forth all your wisdom and make sure that you're producing wholesome results. So I'm going to breathe into this mic and I'm going to meditate right now. So I'm not going to be meditating 100%, but you'll be able to hear the pace of the breath and kind of like what you would like to do. But the length is going to be different from person to person. Okay? Okay, you can hear that. Ooh, you can hear that. Okay, so you can hear a little bit there. And there's a little gap between the inhale and the exhale where there's just nothing going on. There's no inhale, there's no exhale. Your mind's still focused on that gap, and that'll help you to quiet the mind. Mm-hmm. You guys need a little bathroom break before meditation? We can take a little break if you guys need to, or we can just go right into meditation. You guys good for meditation? Okay. All right. So if you guys would like to do either seated, lying, or standing, I'll teach you walking tomorrow. But if you know walking, you're welcome to do walking. Take whatever position's comfortable for you. I'm going to do the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'll come in with the guidance. There'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet, and then we'll come out with the chanting as well. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato สาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, what I'm going to do is just open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to meditation. Now that you guys have a chance to learn it, and we've practiced together 4 times. This is our 4th time. Anything you guys would like to ask about? No? Okay, let me check. See if we have anything online. Nope, we have nothing online either. Okay, so we're going to end class here, and tomorrow we're going to pick it up with chanting and meditation in the morning, first thing, like we do each morning at 9. Then I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots. These are the 3 primary things that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. I'm going to explain to you what those are, and then I'm going to help you understand how to eradicate them. Because today you learned about craving, desire, attachment, but there's other things in your mind too. It's not just craving. There's other things that are plaguing the mind as well. So we'll talk about that, and then I'll give you the solutions to those. Then we're going to talk about the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts are 5 impactful decisions that you can make either wisely or unwisely that are going to either produce wholesome results or unwholesome results. These plug into the Eightfold Path. It's going to give you more understanding of the moral conduct section. And then in the afternoon, I'll teach you guys walking meditation after our lunch. Okay, so enjoy your evening, whatever you might decide to do, and perhaps we'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap.